I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not. My wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears. And I sunned it with smiles, and with soft deceitful wiles. And it grew both day and night, till it bore an apple bright. And my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning, glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree. When we looked at Never Seek to Tell Thy Love, we saw how the narrator of the poem ends something by telling it, and that same thing finds its full expression not by telling it, but by acting on it. In A Poison Tree, the same thing happens, but this time the poet is talking about anger, not love. By telling anger to a friend, the anger comes to an end. But by not telling anger to an enemy, the anger grows. In Never Seek to Tell Thy Love, telling is presented as negative. The traveller expresses love, while the narrator just talks about it. In the case of The Poison Tree, however, it seems at first sight that telling is a positive thing, because it puts an end to the negative emotion of wrath or anger. But is that really what the poem is about? The narrator is glad to gain a victory over the foe, the enemy. So perhaps in this poem too, Blake is talking about the importance of expressing one's feelings, even negative feelings like anger, rather than simply talking about them. There are plenty of analyses of this poem that describe it as a warning against repressing one's anger and not expressing it in words. But that's not something that is actually stated in the poem. On the contrary, the narrator is expressing anger, but through action, by nurturing the poison tree, rather than through words. In Never Seek to Tell Thy Love, we saw that Blake contrasted expressing one's feelings, as the traveller does, with merely telling them, as the narrator of the poem does. And surely, in A Poison Tree, we have the same contrast between the person who ends something by telling it and the person who acts on it and so makes it grow. So, does Blake take the view that love should not be told but anger should? Or does he believe that both should be acted on, that we should express our hatred as well as our love? I think there's a good case for saying that he believes both love and anger or hatred should, in the right context, be expressed, not simply told and so ended. Firstly, the poem was written around the time of the French Revolution, which Blake staunchly supported. And he certainly did not feel that just telling one's wrath would be sufficient to end the injustices that the French people were protesting against. Secondly, in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which was written at around this same time, he praises the tigers of wrath, saying they are wiser than the horses of instruction. And he states that there are two classes of men who are always upon earth and should be enemies. Whoever seeks to reconcile them, he says, seeks to destroy existence. And thirdly, the fact that the tree bears an apple reminds us strongly of the Garden of Eden, where Satan tempts Eve with an apple. And Blake makes it clear in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell and in other works that he's more on the side of Satan here, questioning and challenging the authority of a repressive God, rather than on the side of the conventionally religious. In that context, it seems as if perhaps Blake is not simply saying that telling one's wrath is the right thing to do, nor is he saying that by not telling it one is repressing it. Rather, he describes with relish the person who nurtures wrath, making it grow, and preys on the enemy's jealousy and greed in order to gain victory. Now, this is not the way that most critics today interpret a poison tree, but it fits with what we know of Blake through his other works, particularly The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and we cannot completely discount it. At the same time, however, the narrator acts hypocritically, hiding anger behind a smile and plotting against the foe with deceitful wiles. So perhaps after all, Blake does intend the idea of not telling one's anger to be understood negatively. In the end, the poet declines to offer a judgment, and it is left to the reader to think about it. The greatest literature is very often ambiguous in this kind of way. Rather than giving us answers, it asks us to think about it and come to our own conclusions according to our own understanding.